Okay, it's Saturday night. It's 11:15. I need to be in bed. I ought to be in bed. My wife is already in bed. My child is already in bed. But kind of, my schedule's so crazy that this is like the only time I can find to blog anymore, that I am up. And I've got something rattling around in my head. And so I wanted to blog about it, share it with you guys. And it is about strengths and weaknesses and something that I like to call kicking the crutch. You practice, and you practice for one reason, to develop strengths. Hopefully, if you're practicing to develop weaknesses, let me tell you, you're doing it wrong. No, when you practice, it develops strengths in you. And these strengths are great, but sometimes we can misuse them, and these strengths end up becoming a limitation or a crutch. Good, have you ever heard this phrase, good is the enemy to great? Good is the enemy to great. There was this one lady I knew who really could play the piano really well. I was a young guy just coming up in the church, feeling my way around the Hammond organ, and there was this one lady that played, and she played really well. And I noticed, though, that between songs, she'd play one song really well, and then she would start fidgeting with her keyboard in order to go to the next song. And it always was a little awkward during service. She's fidgeting with that thing, and she was pushing this button and counting a certain number of times. And I finally found out what she was doing. She was transposing between every song. She was pushing the transpose button on the keyboard. See, this lady could really play the piano really well in one key. In one key, she was awesome. In one key, she had developed such a great ear, she could pick up on any song. In one key, she had a monster amount of licks. She was really great in one key. Unfortunately, she never developed past that one key. And the fact that she was good in that one key became a crutch to her. And I learned that lesson, and I found myself constantly having to fight my own crutches. Step one is to identify your crutch. Again, your crutch is a strength that will end up limiting you because it's overused or it's all that you've depended on. If you always lean on a crutch, you won't build strength in those legs beneath you, if that makes sense. Here's some things. You might have a crutch if you always play the same licks over and over. You might have a crutch if you always play in the same key, or if you play at the same tempo or in the same style. As a singer, you might have a crutch if you find yourself rehashing the same musical ideas. If you go to ad-lib a musical idea and it always comes out the same, I think you got a crutch going. If you're always playing the same song, music leaders out there, if you're always having your band play the same song, you might have a crutch. If you're having them play even the exact same arrangement every time, you might have a crutch going on. Songwriters, if you always find yourself coming to the same lyric, if you always find yourself coming to the same chord progression, if all of your songs end up being the same tempo, that's a surefire crutch. Speakers are no different. If you're a pastor out there and you're preaching, but you always find yourself coming back to the same story, that's a crutch. Worship leader, if in between songs you find yourself basically saying the same thing every time, you're relying on a crutch, and you need to get away from that. So number one, you identify your crutch. Number two is you have to kick your crutch. You have to kick it. There's certain ways to do that. Number one, you limit yourself. You limit yourself. If you always play that same lick, you don't play that anymore during practice. When you're practicing, you will not allow yourself to play that lick. If you always play in the same key during practice, you make sure you don't play in that key. If you always play at the same tempo, if tempo is your crutch, you get out your metronome and you play at every other speed but the crutch speed. All right, singers, make sure you don't sing that same lick. Find a way to work around this. If you're a soloist and you always play that same line, or if you always use that same scale, blues scale, anyone? Avoid it. Make yourself not play that. Outline chords instead, or find another scale to play. Maybe you make it more complex. Maybe you bring it back to something simpler. Maybe instead of a blues scale, you play a pentatonic scale. Maybe instead of a blues scale, you find a mode of the major scale to play. But either way, what you're doing is you're forcing yourself not to use that crutch. I have a friend right now who keeps preaching. Every time he preaches from the book of Romans. It's like he's just drawn to the book of Romans. And there's plenty of good things in the Bible to preach on, but he keeps getting drawn to the book of Romans. And it's not so much that the Spirit's leading him, it's that he is so familiar and so used to preaching from Romans, from quoting from Romans. And that's become a crutch for him. And what he's done is he's saying the book of Romans is off limits. And I'm proud of him for doing that. And that really got me thinking about this whole subject. Whatever your crutch is, whatever your team's crutch is, it's up to you as a leader to make sure they get rid of the crutch. Kick the crutch. All right? And it's not easy, but I guarantee you, you're about to go into a season of growth when you get away from your strengths and start working on those weaknesses. You'll see exponential growth. I guarantee it. My name's Chris, and I'm really glad you stopped by my blog, 360WLO.com. I'm going to head to bed because I need to have a great day tomorrow, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow in whatever ministry is going on in your life. God bless you. Have a good night.